Since I was little, I knew exactly where my place was in that house, in the corner. I'm not just talking about the corner of the table during family dinners, where I always got the plastic chair, wobbly, far from the conversations that mattered. I'm talking about the corner of words, the ones that were never directed at me. The corner of photos where my image was always a blurry edge, half out of focus, as if even the camera refused to recognize me. I'm talking about the corner of affection, where love barely touched, like the fading light of the afternoon that never really warms. There was always light in that house, but it was selective, and it never fell on me. Ah, my cousins. If there was a podium in that family, they were always at the top. They were the darlings, the future heirs, the golden boys, as my grandfather used to say. It was enough for one of them to doodle a son with crooked eyes or sing a bad happy birthday, and the adults would melt in applause and laughter. Matthias, you're a genius! Look at this drawing, my goodness, at 7 years old you already understand perspective, said my aunt, proudly holding an A4 sheet full of colorful scribbles. Meanwhile, I, who spent hours writing essays, immersed in dictionaries and metaphors, received as a response to my first gold medal in a literary contest a simple, "Nice. Now go wash the dishes, Louise," my mother said without taking her eyes off the TV. I held the medal in my soap-covered hands, looking at the golden reflection that didn't reflect anything. Neither pride nor attention. Just the cold realization that, even then, I was invisible. But I tried. God knows how I tried. Every time my cousins were praised for something trivial, I held myself to a higher standard. I studied late, took online courses secretly in my room, participated in school Olympiads that no one watched. Every certificate I received was carefully folded and stored in a cardboard box under my bed. A box full of nobody cares. One day I gathered courage. I showed one of those certificates to my father at breakfast. It was from an advanced applied mathematics course. He didn't even lift his eyes from the newspaper. "You need to try harder, Louise. Look at your cousins," he said, as if commenting on the weather. Look at your cousins. That phrase haunted me like a poisonous whisper, even in my dreams. It tormented me in the school hallways, echoed through the walls of the house, vibrated like a warning. You will never be enough. Time passed. The years hardened me. When I turned 18, there was no party. Just a slice of supermarket cake placed on the table as if it were something insignificant. But for me, that day was symbolic. I still believed, that my effort would one day be seen. I had 3 technical courses: advanced English, proficiency in spreadsheets and reports. I had studied management on my own, watched online lectures from CEOs, practiced presentations in front of the mirror. I thought it was my time. The following week, I gathered the courage and went to my uncle's office, the patriarch of the family business, the one everyone obeyed like a modern-day king. The elevator to the top floor seemed to move slower that day. My resume, printed on special paper, trembled in my sweaty hands. He greeted me with a half-hearted smile. "Louise? Oh, yes. Come in." I walked in, smelling the polished wood and power. I sat in the chair in front of his desk. My heart hammered in my chest as if it wanted to escape. I brought my resume. I wanted to apply for a position in the company. He took the paper indifferently, skimmed it, if he even read it. He leaned back in his chair, made a restrained grimace, then dropped the resume on the desk as if it were a used napkin. "You don't have the qualifications needed to work here, just like your cousins," he said, in a voice that had neither anger nor coldness. Just indifference. That hurt more. My stomach churned, my hands clenched into fists. I tried to argue, muttered something about the courses, the languages, the projects I had done on my own. "Louise," he interrupted with a tired sigh. "You should stop trying so hard. It's not for you, and that's okay. Not everyone is cut out for business. Not everyone is born." In that instant, the word family lost the little meaning it still had for me. Blood boiled in my veins, but my skin froze. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. Not there. Not in front of him. I stood up, took my resume with the tips of my fingers, as if that was all that remained of my dignity. Thanks for your time, I muttered, leaving the room with misty eyes. In the reception area, I saw my cousins laughing among themselves. They were probably there for yet another glorious meeting, where they would be fawned over for whatever they said. They saw me. One of them made a comment I didn't quite hear. Or maybe my brain chose not to hear. But the laughter. Oh, that was loud, sharp, like blades. And that's when I realized there was something even worse than being ignored. It was being mocked. That crushed me, as if all the weight of years of rejection had fallen on my shoulders at once. I walked to the elevator with heavy steps, the sound of their laughter still following me like mocking ghosts. But what they did next destroyed me. With my eyes still watery and my face burning with shame, I descended the stairs of the company building as if each step was a cruel reminder of everything I wasn't. The paper of my resume, still in my hands, was now crumpled, sweaty, useless, as if it carried not just my qualifications, but also all the hopes crushed in a single sentence from my uncle's mouth. You should stop trying so hard. It's not for you. These words spun in my head like an incessant, torturous echo. I didn't want to go home. Not yet. The silence of my room felt more hostile than ever. So in a moment of someone still believing in sparks of humanity, I searched for my cousins in the company lobby. Maybe they could help me. I still clung to that fragile illusion, that blood ties, even corroded, could throw me a rope in the middle of the shipwreck. They were there, as always, relaxed, nonchalant, gathered around a glass table with half-finished coffees and gleaming phones. Matthias, the oldest and most arrogant, was laughing at something on Daniel's phone, while Sophia, the youngest, was taking selfies with exaggerated filters. I approached slowly, like someone walking on broken glass. Each step required more strength than the last. My heart pounded, almost erratically, and I felt my voice stuck in my throat. But I went, because I still believed there was a chance. "Hi," I started, and they all turned with a brief glance, lacking any enthusiasm. As if I had interrupted something more important. A silly video, some trivial gossip. "Can I ask something?" Sophia huffed softly. Daniel didn't even take his eyes off his phone. "Ask already, Louise, we're busy," Matthias said, fiddling with his watch as if every second with me was a precious waste of life. I tried to keep my composure, even though my soul felt shattered. I swallowed hard. I went to see Uncle, to show him my resume. But he said I don't have the qualifications. So I thought, maybe you could guide me? Tell me what I should learn to, I don't know, one day, join the company too. For a moment, a single and tragic moment, silence took over the table. A silence that, in any other context, could have been interpreted as reflection. But there, it was just the anticipation of mockery. Daniel was the first to laugh. A nasal, short laugh, but full of disdain. "Oh my God," he murmured, covering his face as if trying to hold back the laughter, but clearly enjoying himself. Sophia didn't take long. She shot me a deadly glance, a half smile of fake pity. "Oh, Louise. Are you serious? Like, really serious?" "Of course she's serious," Matthias said, now laughing loudly. "Look at her face. She really thinks she can work here." And then came the explosion. A collective laugh. Matthias stood up theatrically and pretended to lose his balance from laughing so much. He fell to his knees on the floor, clapping exaggeratedly while saying, "That was good. Seriously, that was too much." "She should be a comedian, not a manager," Sophia added, laughing and taking a photo of her cousin kneeling. "I'm posting this on my stories. Louise trying to become CEO." Ha 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 ha. But what tore me apart inside, the final blow, was when Matthias composed himself, wiping a tear from laughing so much, and approached me with a look full of cruelty. "Want some real advice, Louise?" I nodded, hope clinging to the fragments. "Learn to be invisible." He smiled smugly. "You're already good at it." I didn't answer. There were no words, just a closed throat, my eyes starting to overflow, and a knot in my stomach so tight it felt physical. My fingers still held the crumpled resume, as if I didn't even have the strength to let go of that piece of paper that now seemed to mock me too. I felt my legs shake. The air felt thin, as if the whole room had gotten smaller. Their laughter still echoed behind me as I walked away in hurried steps, almost stumbling. I passed through the company lobby with my face hot and my eyes misty, avoiding eye contact with any employee, any stranger. When I reached the street, the sun was still shining, merciless, oblivious to the personal tragedy unfolding inside me. It was as if the world was laughing too. The city continued with its noises, its hurried steps, its honking horns, and I was just another shadow crossing the sidewalk with a broken heart. I got home without remembering the way. It was as if my body had come on autopilot, while my mind replayed every second of that massacre. I slowly closed my bedroom door, as if any noise could break something even more inside me. I threw myself onto the bed, holding my own chest, and finally let the tears fall, hot, silent, relentless. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I cried until the pillow was soaked, until my eyes burned and my throat ached from holding back the scream. And there, alone, with the muffled sound of their laughter still pulsing in my mind, something inside me changed. It wasn't a burst. It wasn't an explosion. It was a growing coldness, a dense silence that settled where there had once been pain. I slowly got out of bed, went to the box under my bed where I kept my certificates, my awards, my proof that I was worth something. I opened it, took each one as if touching memories from a past life, and it was there, sitting on the floor of my room, surrounded by the achievements no one ever cared to see, that I made a promise. Not with anger, not with shouts, but with a whisper. Cold, precise, lethal. Never again. The words came out dry, definitive. Never again will I be humiliated. Never again will I beg to be accepted. And they will pay, one by one. I felt a chill run down my spine, not from fear, but from decision, from a certainty that was born at the bottom of the well. My crying stopped. I stood up, washed my face, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't recognize the girl staring back at me. Her eyes were red, yes, but there was something there that had never been there before. Determination. A silent, raw, unshakable strength. And that's how my revenge began, with a rejected resume and a broken heart. But my rebuilding? It would come from where no one ever expected. I got my first job outside the shadow of my family on a rainy Tuesday. The kind of day that promises little, when even the sky hesitates to be seen. The position was modest, administrative assistant at a medium-sized company in the same industry where my family had built the empire that denied me. The coincidence, or irony, of being a competitor to them brought a discreet smile to my face, but it was loaded with symbolism only I understood. At first, my days were filled with silent routines. I arrived before everyone, religiously at 7:30 a.m., and stayed after hours. I copied reports, bound presentations, served coffee in white disposable cups, trying to remember how each director liked theirs. No sugar for Mr. Marcondes, sweetener for Dr. Carla, strong and bitter for Eduardo from finance. No one asked me for these small courtesies, but I did them anyway, because I knew what it was like to be invisible, and I was determined to make myself unforgettable. It wasn't flattery, it was strategy. Every paperclip placed in its spot, every email checked before being printed for a signature, each graph triple-checked before it reached the director's desk. Everything was part of something bigger. Every task, no matter how small it seemed, was a step. And I didn't skip any. I climbed, with effort, with silence, with discipline. And I listened. Oh, how I listened. During meetings, even if my presence was merely formal, I paid attention to every word. I absorbed every number, every name mentioned, every acronym for internal processes. Sometimes I wrote down terms I didn't understand and researched them at home. During lunch breaks, I ate alone, not out of loneliness, but out of focus. It was the time I used to review spreadsheets or watch videos on management strategies on my phone. Deep down, I was like a hungry sponge, soaking up ambition. And over time, they started to notice. It was on a Friday, near the end of the workday, that I heard for the first time what no one in my family had ever said to me. "Louise, can I talk to you for a minute?" Mr. Marcondes, a man in his 60s, with a clinical gaze and a posture that commanded respect, said. My heart raced. I left my desk trying to appear calm, but inside, I felt like I was being evaluated for the final exam of my life. Yes, sir? He smiled. It was a light smile, but sincere. You reviewed the cost report before the meeting with the investors, right? I nodded, thinking he was about to point out a mistake. Perfect. There was a discrepancy between two tabs that no one noticed. Only you. That saved us from presenting wrong numbers. Do you know what that means? I shook my head, speechless. That you saved our necks. Excellent work, Louise. He gave me a light pat on the shoulder. Keep it up. It paralyzed me. Not because of the surprise of the compliment, but because of the feeling that washed over me. It was as though a painful part of me, buried for years, had begun to heal. Not with an explosion, but with a touch. A recognition. Something that had never been given to me by those who should have been the first to see my worth. It was new. It almost scared me. That night, I went home with my head held high. It was a small apartment in a distant neighborhood with thin walls and secondhand furniture. But there, in that dignified solitude, I breathed better than I ever had in the vast rooms of my parents' mansion. I began to be seen, not with spotlights, but with respect. And there was a huge difference in that. When Carla, the director of operations, started including me in strategic meetings just to hear my opinion, I knew something was changing. And when they asked me to train the new assistant, I understood I was no longer just a number. I was a reference. The salary was still low, but I saved every penny. I started living with the minimum. I canceled all credit cards, prepared monthly spending spreadsheets, used discount coupons, cooked at home. Every real saved was a seed planted for a future where I wouldn't rely on anyone. Soon after, I made a difficult but necessary decision. I cut contact with my family. No warnings, no fights. Just silence. They didn't notice. No messages, no calls, not even on my birthday. Honestly, thank goodness. Every time I showed up at work, wearing my dress shirt and tying my hair with military precision, I felt like I was transforming. I was becoming the employee every boss wanted to keep. Competent, reliable, discreet. And when I saw the email for registration for the company's executive leadership program, my finger didn't hesitate. I clicked, filled everything out in less than an hour. Hit send, waited. I was accepted. For 6 months, I immersed myself in a new world. The program was tough. Complex case studies, constant presentations, harsh evaluations. But that's where I found myself. I stopped being just a good employee. I started thinking like a leader. I learned to see business with a strategic vision. I spent sleepless nights studying mergers, following market reports, understanding how the competition moved. And something inside me changed. At first, the fire within me was fueled by revenge, by pain, by that inner voice that said, they're going to eat every word they said. But there, amidst all the effort, I realized something that unraveled me. It was no longer about them. It was about me. Proving my worth to myself. Showing that 14-year-old girl who cried in secret after watching her cousins get applauded for a poorly drawn picture. That she was capable of so much more than she imagined. And then came the turning point. I had finished the program among the top 3. I received an offer to join a strategic planning team. My salary tripled. I was invited to attend external events, represent the company in forums. I now sat at the same table as the directors I had once served coffee to, and I was heard. In one of those meetings, Carla, the same director who had once only observed me in silence, turned to me in front of the entire room and said, Louise, I want you to lead the negotiation with the new international supplier. We need someone with a strong hand, focus, and vision, and you've already proven you have all 3. I smiled, but inside, my soul screamed. I started attending events with business people, CEOs, investors. I began to be noticed outside the company's walls. My name, once erased in family meetings, was now mentioned in market reports. But the world Oh, the world has a cruel sense of irony. Sometimes it feels like destiny waits for you to rise completely before testing the strength of your roots. And one day, on an ordinary morning, while having my black coffee and answering emails in the newly renovated office, I received a notification in the company system. New partnership proposal. Sender, Shively Group SA. My heart stopped for a second. My family's company. The empire of my uncles, my smiling cousins, the voices that once told me to stop trying. It was there, in my inbox, requesting a meeting with the board of the company where now I was the CEO. Yes, the perfect opportunity had fallen into my lap, and it was written with their names. But what I would do with this power in my hands? Well, even I didn't know yet. The company that once rejected me, the one where I was humiliated in front of my cousins and despised by my own blood, was now stumbling, weakened, desperate. The empire built over generations by my family was trembling like a poorly cemented house in the face of a financial earthquake. And I discovered this in the most delicious way possible, through a confidential document that crossed my desk, without anyone knowing the personal weight it carried for me. It was a cloudy Friday, like those afternoons that announce storms even before the sky darkens. I was alone in the conference room, reviewing the contracts for the quarter, when Henrique, the head of legal, rushed in with a black folder in his hands. "Louise, we just got this report from our market intelligence team," he said, placing the envelope in front of me with a more serious expression than usual. "I think you're going to want to see this." I opened it carefully as if I instinctively knew there was more inside than just papers. And there was. Shively Group SA, the pride of my family, was in crisis. Growing accounting imbalances, a series of wrong decisions in logistics, and, the most delicious of all, an indication from our main supplier expressing dissatisfaction with the exclusive supply contract that had been in place with the Shivleys for decades. "They're not happy with the deal anymore?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, though inside my heart raced with contained adrenaline. Henrique nodded as he sat across from me. "They're open to renegotiating, maybe with us." The world stopped for a second. That maybe was a golden rope hanging before me. But it wasn't just a strategic move. It was destiny handing me, with open hands, the golden opportunity I had dreamed of for years. An exclusive contract with that supplier didn't just mean profit, it meant control. It meant cutting off the oxygen from the Shivleys. Without that supplier, the foundation of their empire would become unstable, vulnerable, and if it fell, it would fall with everything. "Prepare the proposal," I said, looking Henrique directly in the eyes. "But I want everything to be done cleanly, professionally. No rush, but no hesitation." "Louise." He hesitated, as though he already understood what this meant to me. "Are you sure about this?" I lifted my eyes from the papers. The window behind him reflected the silhouette of the city, gray and pulsating, like my own past. I took a deep breath. It was time to bury the old Louise, the girl who begged for approval, who cried silently, who questioned herself for not being enough. "I'm sure, for the first time in my life." Henrique nodded silently and stood up. "It's going to be a hard blow for them." "A fair blow," I corrected. "No one breaks a soul without consequences." In the days that followed, my team and I worked with almost surgical precision. I didn't delegate a single clause. I didn't let a line pass without reading it. I was involved in every call, every meeting with the supplier's executives, and there was no hesitation on their part. They were already exhausted with the Shively's inefficiency, unfulfilled promises, and frequent logistical delays. All they wanted was a company that delivered results and respected deadlines. And that company was now ours. We closed the exclusive contract in just 5 business days. A record. The final document was signed on a clear morning with a blue sky and strong sun, in absolute contrast to the storm I knew was forming over the shoulders of my old family. The same day I signed the contract, I ordered a strong coffee, sat in my office, and looked out the window. Not with euphoria, but with a deep sense of justice, of closure. The scales, at last, began to tip to the right side. A month later, I received an internal notification. Shively Group SA reports critical operational deficit, risk of partial bankruptcy. I closed my eyes for a moment, as if absorbing a prayer answered. There was no more euphoria, no thirst for revenge, just a quiet peace, and the certainty that the past, no matter how much it hurt, was now serving as a ladder. But the universe had not finished its show yet. Just when I thought the cycle was complete, I received a call from the company receptionist. "Louise, there's a meeting invitation coming from Shively Group." For a second, I thought I had heard wrong. They scheduled a meeting with us? Yes. They want to negotiate directly with the new executive leadership. They didn't mention names. They said they are desperately interested in reaching some sort of agreement. They're requesting urgency. I laughed softly, silently, as I ran my fingers over the arm of the leather chair. They didn't know. They had no idea who I was now. The woman they rejected. The one they laughed at. The one they humiliated. They were coming to beg for mercy from the same girl they once told to learn to be invisible. And in that moment, I understood what true control was. "Schedule the meeting," I responded, with a firm and calm voice. "We'll meet them next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Should I tell them who will be at the table?" I smiled. "No, let them find out." I spent the weekend revisiting my journey. I flipped through old photos, watched videos from my first days at the company, read the reports I had made as an assistant, remembered the coffee runs, the sleepless nights, the tightening of my heart when my name was ignored. Every memory prepared me for the moment ahead. Each reopened wound healed something deeper. I was no longer the girl who begged to be accepted. I was the woman who would make them beg to be heard. The night before the meeting, I picked out my best outfit. A black blazer with a fitted waist, impeccable dress pants, medium-heeled shoes, and a discreet bracelet, elegant, without ostentation, but impossible to ignore. In the mirror, I saw myself complete. The eyes that once cried in silence now looked with determination. The chin, once lowered, now rose. I had been reborn, and I was ready. On the morning of the meeting, I arrived early. I asked for the main room to be prepared, with a panoramic view of the city. The chairs were arranged in a U-shape, and at the central head of the table, I placed a metal plaque with my name. Louise Shively, Executive Director. It was symbolic. It was necessary. The clock read 8:58 a.m. When I received a message on my phone, "They've arrived." I stood up, adjusted my blazer, and took a deep breath. At that moment, there was no more fear, no more bitterness. There was a truth about to be revealed. And that day, I wore my best outfit, because the reunion would be unforgettable. The meeting room was spotless, cold, silent, bathed in natural light streaming through the panoramic glass windows, revealing the city below as a subtle reminder of who was at the top now. The clock showed exactly 9 a.m. when the door opened. I first heard the sound of shoes against the polished marble floor. 3 pairs. Marching in a rhythm that, for years, had sounded like a synonym for power. My cousins, in suits, still too young for the weight they pretended to carry. And in the center, walking a bit slower, was he, my uncle. The man who once coldly told me my resume wasn't good enough. The same one who, years before, had lifted up the incompetent nephew in front of the whole family and called him the heir of the future. Now his steps no longer had the same certainty. His gaze, still haughty, reflected someone who still didn't know what he was about to face. They entered as though they expected to find a savior. They looked around, restless, searching for an imposing figure. Perhaps a graying man, someone with titles hanging on the wall. But what they found was something else. They found me. I was seated at the head of the table. I wore my black blazer like armor, crossed my legs calmly and firmly, and kept my gaze fixed on them. At first, they didn't recognize me. Maybe it was the haircut or my posture, but it only took a second, a closer look, an old memory that asserted itself. And then came the shock. My uncle paled instantly, as if he had seen something he never expected to find. The past he tried to erase, now in front of him, stronger, more alive, more real than ever. You, he murmured, his voice faltering for the first time in years. You are the... I waited for a moment. Just one. Enough to let the weight of the revelation sink in on his shoulders. CEO of the company you underestimated, I completed, my voice firm, without needing to raise my tone. Sit down, Uncle. We have a lot we haven't talked about. My cousins looked frozen. One of them, Jonas, the one who didn't know the difference between net and gross profit, adjusted himself in his chair, uncomfortable. The other, Felipe, averted his gaze, as if he couldn't hold his own pride in front of my presence. Funny. They were so loud before. I sat elegantly, crossed my legs, and took a deep breath, letting the silence do the work that words could not. Because that silence was the same one that had followed me throughout my childhood. The silence at family gatherings when no one asked how I was. The silence at the dinner tables when my achievements were ignored. But this time, the silence was theirs. And it weighed like lead. My uncle cleared his throat. He tried to regain his composure, forced a diplomatic smile, almost pathetic. Louise, we need to talk. The company is facing some difficulties, and we believe you could collaborate. The supplier you closed the deal with, well, he was essential to us. I looked directly at him, the same gaze that had hidden from shame for years. But now it was firm, cutting. Difficulties? I repeated, as if savoring the word. How curious. The last time we were face to face, you told me I wasn't qualified, that there was no place for me in the family business. But look, now you're in my office, asking for help. He swallowed hard. One of my cousins tried to intervene. Louise, this is just business. You don't need to take it personally. My gaze turned into a blade. Oh, but it is personal. Extremely personal. Business is what we're doing now. But what you did to me was contempt. And contempt, cousin, is something that comes back. It always comes back. My uncle placed his hands on the table, leaning forward a little. He had deep, tired eyes and an expression that the years of arrogance could no longer sustain. We were wrong. I was wrong. I recognize that. But the company, there are hundreds of employees, families depending on it. It doesn't have to be this way, Louise. We are willing to negotiate, to give in. I leaned forward too, slowly, controlled. I looked him straight in the eyes and let my voice come out low, sharp, almost sweet. I'm willing to, Uncle. Willing to give you the same answer you gave me years ago. I paused. You are not qualified enough to compete with our company. Silence. Not just any silence. It was the kind of silence that reverberates. That speaks louder than screams. That bleeds the ego of those who thought they would never fall. I saw my uncle clench his fists for a moment. I saw my younger cousin flush, trying to contain the shame. None of them knew what to do. There was no escape, no excuse that could erase all they had ignored. But there was more. I wasn't done yet. I stood up. Slowly walked around the table. My heels echoed like drumbeats on the marble floor. I stopped in front of them, placed my hands in my pockets, and stared at all three with serenity. You taught me to be strong, to be silent, to endure. Every bit of contempt was a brick in the wall I built inside of me. And now, you are reaping exactly what you've sown. My uncle seemed to want to say something, but I raised one hand, stopping him. You don't need to try to justify yourself, or beg. The contract is already in effect. And unlike you, I honor commitments. The partnership with the supplier is exclusive and definitive. There is no return clause. They looked at each other. For the first time in my life, I was the one controlling the game, and there was nothing they could do. I took a step back, returning to the head of the table. I grabbed the folder of documents on the table and closed it with a sharp snap. The meeting is over. Louise, my uncle tried one last time. I raised my eyes calmly. Call me Mrs. Shively. They hesitated. They stood up slowly, too afraid to meet my gaze again. One by one they left, heads bowed, defeated. The door closed behind them with a muffled sound, as if that sound sealed something, as if the story had finally been written by my hands. I stood there for a few seconds, alone. I looked around. The room, the sun coming through the window, the city below. Everything was proof that I had won. But deep down, something still pulsed. A small echo inside me, a final knot that needed to be undone. They left without saying another word. But I still had something to do before closing this chapter. And this last part would be personal. Very personal. That night, when the door to my house closed behind me, the weight of the journey finally settled on my shoulders. The air was cooler than I expected, and the moon, high and full, seemed to look down at me with an approving gaze. Every step I took toward my refuge was a step closer to something I had already achieved but still needed to internalize. There was no more anguish, no more of the tight knot in my throat that used to accompany me. I had made it this far. It wasn't just a personal victory. It was the answer to everything I had gone through, everything I had silently endured. The echo of my cousin's laughter, my uncle's harsh voice telling me I would never be good enough for the family business. Those memories were still etched in my mind, but now they were just shadows of the past, like a scar that no longer hurts, but whose mark remains forever. When I entered the room, I looked at the corner where I used to hide, where tears would fall unseen. That corner where I spent hours alone, consumed by doubt and frustration. But today, that same corner was no longer a place of suffering. It was a landmark, a symbol of everything I had overcome. I sat there, unhurried, observing the walls around me. The house was silent, but inside me there was a whirlwind that was now filled with an unexpected feeling. It was peace. And this peace was filled with a quiet happiness, not the superficial joy that comes from a quick achievement, but the happiness that is built slowly, over the years, in the warmth of hard work, in lonely nights, in days that seemed endless. I pulled the old resume from the drawer. The same resume my uncle, that arrogant man who never valued me, had thrown away with a dismissive sneer. The same resume that, at that time, had been a desperate attempt to get into a place where my name was never welcome. I felt the weight of the paper in my hands. It was the past, what they had refused me. I looked at it with a calm, almost impassive expression. It was like looking at a scar. It didn't hurt anymore, but it was there, and I knew exactly what it represented. A mark that spoke of a time when I felt small, invisible, and full of insecurities. A time that was now behind me, buried under layers of achievements that no one could deny. With a long sigh, I put the resume aside and turned on the radio. The music that began to play was soft, melancholic, and yet, there was something in it that brought me a sense of comfort. I picked up the bottle of wine I had opened earlier, before heading out to the meeting, and poured myself a generous glass. The red liquid swirled in the glass as I watched it closely, as if it were a reflection of the journey I had made. It was the final touch, the moment when the last piece fell into place. I took the first sip, savoring the deep, full-bodied taste of the wine. It wasn't just the taste of the wine that warmed me. It was the warmth of victory, the silent acknowledgement of a job well done, of everything I had achieved, not with shouts, not with explosive revenge, but with patience, with intelligence, and above all, with a focus I never let slip away. That was how my revenge was realized. It wasn't impulsive revenge. It wasn't revenge filled with shouts and accusations. It was the revenge of growth. It was the revenge of blossoming. I was like a seed cast into the darkness, and there, where they thought I would never grow, I bloomed. And not just bloomed, I put down deep roots, grew tall, and now I was reaping the fruits of my efforts. The radio played a gentle melody, almost as if it was accompanying me in this moment of reflection. I felt a quiet joy, that feeling of a mission accomplished. And contrary to what I had imagined, there was no cry of victory or sarcastic laughter. The smile that formed on my lips was small, but genuine. It was the smile of someone who knew that the most important thing wasn't being recognized by them. The most important thing was the fact that I recognized myself, that I knew without a doubt that I had earned my place in the world, and no one could take that from me. I had won. And no, it wasn't an empty victory. It was a victory built every day of hard work, every sleepless night, every no I heard that made me stronger. Today, the surname Shively no longer weighed on me like a burden, like a curse. Now it had another meaning. It was a reminder, a powerful reminder of what I had overcome, of what I had achieved with my own hands, without relying on favors, without begging for attention. The surname Shively was now a metaphor. It was no longer synonymous with oppression or disdain. It was a memory that, even in the darkness, a seed can become a forest. I was the forest now. I was the strength they never imagined I could be. With the glass of wine in my hand, I lifted my eyes to the reflection in the mirror. There I was. No longer the insecure girl, no longer the invisible niece. Now, I was the woman who, with patience and determination, had carved her own path. A path that no one could erase. The music on the radio changed. Now, a more upbeat melody began to play. The sound spread throughout the house, filling the air with renewed energy. I looked out the window. The city was calm, the lights shining below like distant stars. A quiet night, a night of victory. I had won. And there was nothing more to prove. They knew it. And now, the world knew it too. I didn't need validation anymore. I didn't need their recognition. Because I knew my victory wasn't in their gaze, but in my own gaze, in my own peace. I had won. And with that came the certainty that in the end, what really matters is what you build from the inside out. And I had built something immense. With a serene smile, I looked at the glass of wine in my hands and silently toasted to myself. Life gave me the tools, and I used them to shape my destiny. Now I was ready to move forward, head held high, heart at peace. I told my story, and now I ask you, have you ever been through something like this? Have you ever felt invisible within your own family? Have you ever been treated as if you weren't good enough, even when trying your hardest to show who you truly are? Have you ever had the feeling that no matter how dedicated you were, recognition always seemed to slip through your fingers while others, who perhaps didn't try as hard, were constantly applauded? I know how that feels. I know how it hurts to feel that. In the place where you should be loved and valued, you are treated as if you had no worth. And I also know that, many times, the only way to move forward is to find our own strength. The strength to build what no one believed we were capable of building. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of powerful content coming soon. Stories of overcoming, pain, but also transformation. That heal. That free. And look, click on the video that's appearing on the screen now. It's another story of intense, transformative feminine revenge. You won't want to miss it. We'll see you there.